Hey everyone, welcome back to a new video. I know I was gone a little bit longer than usual, but I just kinda had a rough couple of days. But I am back now with a brand new video. Before we get into the stories, I need to give a trigger warning for story number 3, for sexual assault. If you don't want to hear those kinds of stories, you've now been warned. I'll have the story labeled in a pinned comment with all the other timestamps if you want to avoid it. Now if you're all ready, let's get into the stories. And remember to always stay hungry. I'm a 25-year-old female, and I used to be an assistant manager at Dollar Tree just a few years ago. It was a Sunday afternoon, and I was taking my lunch break in the office. As soon as I got done eating, I went to the registers to check on my cashier, and there was an older man standing at the second register. As I approach, the man then says, "Hey, you're just the person I need to help me. My girlfriend needs me to email her this unemployment paperwork from my phone, and I'm not sure how to do it. Could you help me?" I was very confused as to why this man came into a Dollar Tree asking me to help with this, as he wasn't even a former employee or anything. But me being the people pleaser I am, said that I wasn't really sure I would know how to help him, but that I could try. He hands me his phone, and he just keeps talking on and on about how his girlfriend needs him to send this paperwork, and how I'm a lifesaver. I told him if he could screenshot the paper she needs, I could attach it to an email for him. He just kept beating around the bush though, and he had me getting into the email app on his phone, but wasn't really having me do anything productive. I asked him what his girlfriend's email was so that I could enter it in for him. He pauses, and he then says that he doesn't know and that he has to call her. So he takes his phone from me and he acts like he's calling his girlfriend. He starts going on and on about how this really nice girl at the Dollar Tree is helping him with the unemployment paperwork. And he says he's going to buy me a candy bar and pop next time he comes in because I was so helpful, which I nicely declined. He keeps going on and on without asking for the email, and I don't even hear anyone speaking back on the other line. So at this point, I'm getting very uncomfortable. All of a sudden, he just says, "Oh, I have to go. Thank you so much for your help." And he leaves the store. I turned to my coworker Lloyd, who was working the register, and I gave him a weird look. I then said, "I have no idea what that guy was talking about, but he kinda creeped me out." Then Lloyd tells me that the man had actually came in about 15 minutes before I was done with my break, claiming that his car ran out of gas across the street at the speedway, and how he needed someone to come outside to help him. And that's when he asked if there was another employee there. Lloyd just told him no, and continued ringing up the customer at his register. That's when he then said that the guy proceeded to stand up there until I came out for my lunch break. Of course, at this point I'm getting really anxious, and I then say to Lloyd that it's really weird that this man tells me how he needs help with one thing, but had asked for something else initially. But Lloyd just says that maybe the man was lonely and just needed someone to talk to. This encounter still rubbed me the wrong way, and I stayed on alert. I called my mom, and she agreed that it was very strange, and she thought that I should call the non-emergency police line, as I had another scary experience working there in the past with another strange man. I assured her I would be okay because I didn't want to bug the police if I was overreacting, so I just went about my night. Exactly 1 week later, I was working on a Sunday again, and I had sent my cashier on break, and I was working the register. A customer I had just cashed out came back into the store and then tells me, "I'm really not comfortable walking out to my car. There's a strange man out there scoping out the store, and he's walking up to people, saying that his car ran out of gas across the street at the speedway, and how he needs someone to come help him." I told her that the very same thing happened just last week, and I asked her to describe the man. Her description was exactly the same as the man who had been there a week before. So I called my mom, and I went outside, and lo and behold, it was the same creepy old man. I ran into the office to try and find the non-emergency number and dial it. Of course, the number listed in the office wasn't the right number. I then call my mom back to see if she can get a hold of anyone. In the 2 minutes it took me to do all this, by the time I got back outside, the man was nowhere to be found. At this point, I'm really scared because this man has come to the store twice trying to lure women to his car while I've been working. I was on edge for the rest of my shift, but I didn't have anything else weird happen. The very next night when I was closing, I had asked my husband to sit outside in his car after we closed, just to make sure that me and my cashier made it safely to our cars. It was about 9:15 p.m., and we were already closed at this point, when my husband then calls me. He tells me that there's a dark blue truck that has drove by slowly throughout the parking lot 3 times, and that the 3rd time he drove real close to the store, and he stuck his whole upper half of his body right out the window as he was trying to look inside the store. He said the man matched the description of the same one who had been in the store previously. After pulling past the store, the man in the truck pulled over next to my car and parked there for several minutes. My husband then called the police, and he took his phone out to try and take a picture of the man's license plate, and right when he did that, the man sped out of the parking lot. By the time the police got there, the man was already gone. I was able to file a police report, and the police sat outside the Dollar Tree when I closed one time, and I never did see the man again. I did end up finding out though that the Tractor Supply right next door to our store had a strange man who matched my description, and he was doing the exact same thing to the women that left their store. Now, I know nothing major ended up happening, but it was definitely a very scary situation, and especially with all of the sex trafficking that's going on. You can never be too careful. Always be aware of your surroundings, and if something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't. Always trust your gut. I'm a 25-year-old female, and I used to be an assistant manager at a Dollar Tree just a few years ago. I previously submitted a story where I talked about how I had another scary encounter with a strange man, and I thought I would share that one as well. But before I was an assistant manager, I was just a cashier, and it was probably about 1:30 in the afternoon, and I had just gotten off my shift. I had parked in the back of the parking lot, and the Dollar Tree parking lot is attached to parking lots for other businesses as well. So there's a gap between the parking spaces where people drive between the different lots. I had stopped and waited at that gap for a man in a truck that was driving through. Once he drove past me, I continued to my walk. Out of the corner of my eye, I could see that right after the man drove past, he stopped his truck right there. He then got out, leaving his driver door open, and he started walking quickly behind me. I ran to my car, shoved my key into the lock, and I jumped in my car and locked it. Once I was inside, I watched the man from my rearview mirror, and I saw him pause, turn around, and open the back of his truck like he was putting something back there, and he then jumped in his truck and drove away quickly. I had this horrible feeling in my stomach, like I had just barely avoided something terrible. I then tried justifying why the man could have gotten out of his truck, but I couldn't come up with any explanation as to why he just stopped his truck and started speed walking behind me. I ended up filing a police report when this happened, but I never ended up hearing anything afterwards. I was definitely more aware of my surroundings after that incident. I'm not really sure if this would count as a scary Walmart story, or more of a what the fuck kind of story, but it definitely felt like a little bit of both. Last year, I had actually planned to drive with my girls from Pennsylvania to Virginia, as we were going to celebrate Easter there. I had planned to leave on Good Friday. Well, more like the middle of the night Thursday, then into Friday. I really like to drive when there's no traffic. The girls usually sleep, plus getting to my mom's at like 8 in the morning helps by a whole extra day, as opposed to leaving at a human hour and wasting time stuck in traffic. Well, given that I like to leave in the middle of the night when my husband doesn't join us and I have to do all the driving, I like to go to bed super early. This particular evening, I tried to lay down around 5 p.m. and I had trouble falling asleep. The more I couldn't sleep, the more irritated I got. The more irritated I got, the more I couldn't sleep. Around 7 o'clock, I decided to just take a quick trip to Walmart for a couple of things that I had planned to get after I got to my mom's. The Walmart I went to is a bit on the shady side, but it's usually nothing worse than a larger population of weirdos that I'm used to, and a lot of shoplifting. Shoplifting to the point that when we first moved to that area, my dumb self took a minute to realize why it seemed like there were usually cops there every time we were there. I've never seen anything over the top or violent there though. Mostly just a lot of weirdos, as well as a population that honestly makes me wonder how dumb people are, and also a little sad to realize that's in the area. There's a decent population that may legitimately be in desperate enough circumstances to feel like shoplifting is their only way to survive. You know, the whole stole a loaf of bread to feed my family concept. This particular trip took me there to grab some yarn and a specific size crochet hook. I'm not naive enough to think that nothing bad can happen at Walmart, but at this point, the store was so crowded, just over 40 hours before Easter, and there was so much weird stuff at that place in general that I'm honestly not sure if the creep that I ran into in the craft aisle followed me there or happened to see me there while I was looking for what I needed. In any case, he decides to start talking to me. He was clearly at least 10 years younger than me and just randomly looking at the yarn. After pulling some yarn down and then putting it back, he asked if he could ask me a question. I got slightly creeped out vibes, but on the flip side, I was in the aisle nitpicking the yarn to try and decide on what color combinations for a pattern I wanted. And I was thinking in my mind that if I had my husband get the yarn for me, he would probably mess it up. He's good at matching colors, but he's clueless when I tell him I need a certain brand or texture. So the random guy in the yarn aisle asking if he could ask me something kinda threw me off. Because I'm like, why is there a young guy in a craft aisle? Maybe he's trying to make something and he doesn't know what to pick, or he's shopping for someone else, and maybe he's just as clueless as my husband. Boy, was I wrong. He started asking me things like, was I married, was I happy with my husband, etc. And that led to him actually claiming that he makes porn videos, and then trying to ask me very explicit questions, and also making explicit comments in general, saying things like he's into older white women. He was a dark-skinned man, but I couldn't really tell if he was mixed or Hispanic. Not entirely relevant, but it adds context to the whole white women statement. He started slightly touching my hips, back, and neck, and he had kinda tugged on my hair a bit. It was in French braided pigtails at the time, which keeps it from being annoying at night. After he pulled my hair, he said that he liked it. I made some offhand comment about how putting my hair up tight is some kind of weird migraine relief sometimes for me. I was also having a headache going on at this point. He asked repeatedly if I would go to a secluded area in the garden department to mess around with him because he thought I was hot. Huge alarm bells at this point. I don't really know what his exact intentions were, but I'm very certain that if I would have gone, it would have been very bad for me. I didn't want to rule out him just messing around with me though, because he was already so brazen with how he was talking to me and acting so weird in general that I don't think anything he would have done or not done would have really surprised me all that much. I almost forgot to add this, but by this point, he asked me if I've ever done or would be willing to do porn videos. He said he would pay for it, and if I would do it, and he tried to offer to pay me to just go mess around in the garden for a bit. And at one point, he literally put his hand on my skirt and groped me. He was so quick with it that I wasn't even able to react. Through this whole situation, I was frozen. I wanted to get away from him, but like, what do I do? I was kind of scared to even try and yell. But my paranoid mind was thinking that what if he by chance has a hidden weapon or any possible way to try and hurt me? I said no, and that I needed to finish up my shopping, and I wanted to leave, that I wasn't interested in going with him. He proceeded to follow me while I started looking in random aisles, as in he was almost right on top of me. He was so close. I was hoping he would just lose interest and leave. I was also trying to figure out how the hell to get away from him and be absolutely sure that he didn't follow me out of the store. I didn't want him to follow me in general, but the store was so busy, and I had to park pretty far away from the store in a weird spot. Not exactly ideal to be able to get out there fast or quickly back into the store if I noticed him following me. I contemplating trying to hide in the bathroom a bit, but I obviously wouldn't be sure if he left, and I also wouldn't have put it past him to follow me into the bathroom. I was randomly walking around because I know someone who works there, and I was hoping to find him specifically. The guy is huge, like well over 6 feet tall, and he's built like a football player. Unfortunately though, I didn't see him. I decided to go to the checkout, hoping he would leave, and I figured I would find an excuse to go to customer service and try to get someone to walk me to my car. I wasn't entirely sure how I was going to keep him from being suspicious or anything, but I didn't have any other plan. The self-checkout line was really long, and he kept saying that, "We should probably go. Let's go mess around." I repeatedly told him that I was going home when I was done. He eventually finally left me alone and walked off. After I was done paying, I had asked the greeter if someone could walk me to my car. He pointed out a couple of ladies that were near the customer service, who were likely managers or loss prevention. One of them said sure, and they walked with me. I gave her all the details I could, including that I'd used the self-checkout, and I didn't know if they might be able to view the cameras and see him. When we were at my car, I had noticed a cop car had pulled up. No idea who called the cops, but the timing seemed too short for them to have called about a shoplifter, and they didn't seem to be acting like there was a big emergency, and there was only one of them. So I'm not really sure if one of the employees called because of that guy, or if maybe there was something else going on in the store. In any case, that was the scariest and weirdest encounter that I've ever experienced there, and I really hope I never see that sicko again. This happened not that long ago. I went to a fairly recognizable craft store that I frequent for items that I use for my growing obsession with making things. I never actually had this happen to me until the last trip. My dad drove me to the store, and he told me to go inside and get what I needed while he waited in the car. I thought nothing of it, and I walked straight inside. I grabbed a basket, and I immediately walked to the back of the store where the items I wanted were stored at. On my way there, a man had stood in my way, so I then politely said, "Excuse me," and then squeezed past. I went to the jewelry making section, and I was looking through the charms for something that I wanted to use for my crafts, when out of the corner of my eye, I saw the man that I passed walk by the front end of the aisle. I thought nothing of it, and I just went back to looking, and not that. Much later, he actually turned down the aisle, and he began walking behind me. I thought it was a little strange, but for all I knew, he could be lost and didn't know what aisle to look down for a certain item. But again, he turned down the aisle, walking past me, then stopping to look at something, but I could really feel his eyes on me. I would occasionally glance at him and notice that he was staring at me. This obviously freaked me out, and I started to panic, trying to grab all of the items that I needed as fast as possible. I then went to another aisle, and once again, there he was walking past me. He was at the end of the aisle, walking down the aisle past me. Now, I'm an extremely anxious person, and I began to think that maybe I was just overthinking it, and he really was just minding his own business. Until I gathered all of the things I wanted, and I put them in the basket. I went to walk down the aisle, and he just stood in my way. I politely asked him if I could squeeze by, and he took a little step, but it wasn't really enough to squeeze past him, considering that I'm on the bigger body size. But I tried my best to squeeze past him, and then made a beeline for the checkout line. And like a nightmare, he was there before I was, waiting at the front door, staring at me. And for the first time, I actually felt dread and fear. His eyes were glossed over, almost yellow, with red veins that looked like he was on something. His eyes were so red that it looked like he hadn't blinked the entire time he was watching me. I tried to ignore him as the cashier then checked out all my items. I then paid and grabbed my bags and then speed walked out the door into the car. In my head, I'm just panicking and screaming that my dad would see me and praying the man didn't follow me outside. Luckily, the man didn't follow me out to the car, but he was standing outside on the sidewalk. I felt so anxious. I don't know what the man wanted or what I did to make him so keen on watching me, but I don't think I feel safe shopping alone there anymore.